Hello, welcome everybody. Today, me, Atni, and Daniel are gonna take some time to chat between us. It's gonna be a casual conversation of how Ethiopians, specifically developers, can do really well in a remote work environment. Atni, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Athanasius Tesfaye, or you can just call me Athne. I was born in Ethiopia. I immigrated to the United States when I was 7. And long story short, I'm the founder of Hire Maado. We connect software developers mostly from Ethiopia to startups in North America. And so I've looked at many profiles and developers and resumes. And me and Jonas have a word to say, that's for sure, on some easy things you can pick up to market yourself better for remote work. As you know, working remotely is um, it's a trend, but it's it's a kind of a huge shift because it's not like regular work where um, in the real world, when you introduce yourself to someone, you're walking up to them, and they say around like 90% of or 70% of communication is nonverbal. So you see how tall they are, how's their handshake, how's their grip, do they smell nice, what clothes do they have, the way they're walking, and when you meet people in, in a remote world, it's like you only have so much to work with, so you have to perfect it. Luckily, you can go really far uh, by paying attention to little cues like your work environment and how you're dressed and your lighting, and if you have nice audio, if you have good internet connection. But these are just some of the things that we'll talk about here on this call.
Yeah, and then Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, please.
Okay, so my name is Daniel. I'm a electrical and computer engineering graduate from Addis Ababa University. I've been working as a software engineer for 3+ years, and I've been working as a remote developer for almost 1.5 years. So I'm here to share my experience as a remote developer. Uh, that's it, shortly.
Yeah, perfect. So Anthony, like, is there an area you want to get kick this off? Well, I could introduce myself. I'm Yonas. I am also one of the co-founders of Maado, which helps Ethiopians find remote work with US and Canadian companies. And we have helped probably about 15 people and generated uh, more than 70,000 US dollars for Ethiopians. And since we started doing this, it was a year and 9 months about. So yeah, like that's one of the areas that I've been working on for a while. So I have a few things to share on that as well. So how do you want to get started, Athan?
Yeah, let's talk about how to properly market yourself as a developer. You know, if you're a developer and you're trying to get a job, you have to sell yourself, right? Um, I'll get you in on a little secret. Um, if when someone when Google hires a developer for $100,000, they're only doing it because they'll get at least $150,000 back from the developer's work, maybe 200,000, right? So, um, what you're offering as a salary, I want my salary to be this much. Do you do you really believe you can offer in value 2, 3, 10 times more than you're getting paid, right? um, and the only way a startup or a company um, knows you have something to offer is um, talking about yourself on LinkedIn. A lot of developers don't even have LinkedIn. Like if you're trying to find a job, just in general, you should have LinkedIn, right? To display all your experiences where you work. But if you're trying to get a job in a remote world, you need LinkedIn. It's not just a nice thing to have. It's a requirement, right?
I think across the board, that's one of the things that I noticed when I came to North America. People check your LinkedIn. We like in Ethiopia, wasn't you had a LinkedIn, but you didn't really do anything with it, and you just filled it out. Maybe sometimes you don't even have a picture, and that's very normal on the Ethiopian side. Like it's not a huge deal. If somebody's gonna hire you locally, they're not gonna be like, "Let me look at your LinkedIn." They'll ask for your resume, and that's so common in Ethiopia. People don't understand that. I would say 100% of hiring managers will check your LinkedIn in Canada or the US.
I would even say if we had to get rid of one out of the two, LinkedIn or resume,
They'll get rid
probably
of
be a
resumes.
resume.
That's what they would do. So I think that's a part of the challenge is there's the lack of awareness. People don't know how important LinkedIn is. So I've seen the whole, no pictures, or, people have a hoodie on, you can't see their face, or it's a picture of their back,
man.
and it's just all the different things,
Especially the developers, they would have like
the developers, because some of them are
cool.
introverted, they have and I like the pictures are nice, but when somebody is trying to hire you, they're worrying about, will this person steal my code, can I trust them? And then now you have this hoodie on, you look like you're trying to steal. Yeah, you look like you're a hacker or something. So for that person to be like, oh yeah, that's the guy I want to give a job to, is very rare. So it's just that understanding of yeah, they check it. Go ahead.
I think one way on why LinkedIn is more important than a resume is people are emotional beings, not logical beings, right? People are personable. So you are not your resume, right? Most resumes don't even have a picture on it. Resume is just a list of facts and whatever. But you have to understand people are emotional. They're not logical beings, so they want a face to resonate with. Like, are you a real person? Like, I can hand you a resume, the one I've made just from scratch. Like, it doesn't even have to be a real person, right? I can put a fake name, a fake experience, and I hand it to you. You won't know if it's real or not. Then you see a face. Then you see some posts on LinkedIn of what you've done. Some awesome developers, great developers, are posting their projects continuously. That is so attractive,
It does make a difference. And another thing that I encounter quite a bit is recent graduates, where they're like, hey, I'm looking for remote work. And one of the things I tell them often is, you need some sort of portfolio. Typically devs tend to put it on GitHub. They have a GitHub profile. And that's one of the things I tell them, have a portfolio. And a part of what they say is, well, I haven't found any work yet, so I don't have any projects. And I say, well, make projects, create projects, build something, and then use that for your portfolio, instead of like waiting until you get a job. Even if you're in school, start to like the projects that you're building for school, gather them, polish them up, make them look nice, and then host them somewhere and say, look at this really cool app I built. And those, because and this is actually news to a lot of people in North America, people care about whether you can do the work more than they care about your education. And which is the flip side in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, people care about your education first. Like, do you have the paper? Do you have a degree? Do you have a master's? In Canada or the US, they're like, can you do the job? I don't care how you learned how to do the job, but can you do it? And if you can do it, they'll give it to you. So it's a big difference there.
Yeah, we have to be honest. Like, I don't care which university you went to. Honestly, I've never checked for someone's schooling, or the average recruiter looks at your resume for maybe 3 seconds, right? They look at your experiences, your name, what you've done at these companies, and off they go. And maybe the average time spent by a recruiter looking at your resume should be longer. But again, people are emotional beings. It's just it's just kind of like reading a book. It's like, okay, this facts, okay. But I do say when I find someone's portfolio link, I do spend some time on really cool looking ones. Like, oh, how do you add this button? Okay, nice. Like this animation. Oh, he's worked on these projects. Oh, okay. Let me click on this project. Oh, you have something. And um, a good a good rule of thumb is, show your resume and your portfolio to like a 5-year-old kid. And if he doesn't approve of it, or if it doesn't entice him, maybe you should change something. I think we're all kids at heart. And, a simple design, look, for a front end developer and a designer, it's mandatory that you have to have some type of portfolio or front end design to show. But even some back end developers, like, brother, you can fork some GitHub repos and some portfolio pages. You can find some, you don't even have to create your own. Just something that you can display your work and who you are. You can list your hobbies. You should come off as personable. And having a portfolio link, it's a lot more. It gets you a lot further than a resume, I would say.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. What now? Since you've been running your company, what are some of the things that you have encountered where you felt like, oh, okay, this is a gap that we need to address? Like, did you have any experiences? Maybe let's talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, I'll start with mine. I mean, first off, we've been working totally remote, right? So, I check out a resume. I check out our portfolio. Okay, this guy seems decent. Let me get him on a call first with me. I talk with him. They seem pretty charming, and okay, wow, like A2SB and a really nice university, awesome. But I have a little bit empathy to them because most of them tend to be young, and they might have a crappy camera, a potato camera, and their work environment is like there's like a noise in the background, and you don't know if they're in a mud hut or something, but they seem somewhat charming. And then you get them on a call with a developer to technically test them, and they absolutely fail, or they don't even show up, right? So it's really important to show yourself properly in the beginning. As I said, when you meet someone in person, you're sizing them up, like the way, do they have their chest forward? How is their handshake? Where are their eyes when they're looking at me? You should pay attention to a Google Meet call or Zoom call in the same manner. What are they seeing in my background? Is it nice contrasted? I even have a lamp right here so that I have some light coming at me. Do I look nice? In this video, you don't know whether I'm in a crappy house, somewhere in the middle of Antarctica, or a huge mansion. That's a big range. But all you care about is I have a nice background and I'm approachable. So don't ignore these things. And the second thing is communication with developers. If it's remote, I can't verify whether you're spending 3 hours in the bathroom, or kicking it with friends, or So we switched to uh, communicating what's being done by weekly goals, right? You're the developer, you're the expert, right? But we give you a goal, like is to complete this project. We give them uh, they make the daily tasks. They know exactly what to do to finish the weekly goals, and we make sure that they have a time for each daily task. Like, hey, I think I can finish this task from 2 to 3 p.m. This task will take me 1 hour, or whatever. It doesn't even have to add up to 6, 8 hours. But as long as they can finish the task, that matters more than the hours spent. And then and I make sure every developer communicates that, so I know what's being done. Again, people are emotional beings. If I'm spending money on you, I don't want to feel like a day has gone and I've just spent money on nothing. I want to see something like, okay, I've spent money, but things are getting done. That's okay.
Yeah.
And even better is having a video call with people.
And I guess a part of it is, and this is something I noticed, is, um, production is so important in North America. Like, people care about what you're able to do. Like, did you do this job? Like, I paid you. Like, sometimes the mentality is not the same in Ethiopia, where people would pay you because you need money, right? Like, which is very, very weird for somebody who's,
that's not how it works.
No, that's not how it works in North America. But even when people message you sometimes, they're like, hey, can you help me with this thing? And that's not very common in North America. People don't message people that way. It's always, okay, how can I benefit you? How do you benefit me? And then the flip side of it is also, um, because the culture is like set up to not need as much help from individuals, right? Like, most of the things you can access. If you have a job, you can live decently well in the US or Canada. Here we have universal healthcare. You don't need to ask anybody to help you with medical fees or expenses. So there's a lot of things where the fabric that's necessary in Ethiopia, where people have to help each other, doesn't exist here. So it's very abnormal for people to be like, uh, to be asked for help in that way, because nobody gives it and it's not expected either. But in saying that, Daniel is here. This is just our side of the perspective, but he can represent the Ethiopian side of the dev. So what is the experience like on their end? Like, Daniel, what do you think? Like, for them, what are they thinking? And what do you feel like your experiences were, let's say, working with global clients?
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with most of the things you said, guys. So what I want to add is like, yeah, in terms of marketing yourself or creating brand of yourself as a developer and competing in the international market, like say Ethiopian developer is most of the developers lacks like to present themselves in a standard like in the US or like in clients that look for developers. Like when a client in Canada is looking for developer, like they compare you with all over the world, right? A developer from India, developer from Pakistan or UK. So you are like competing in the international market. So you have to present yourself in that standards. So what's the trend is like, if someone has succeeded in landing a remote job, so everyone will try to follow that path. So they will try to copy their portfolio or resume formats and everything, and they think like it's gonna work. So, but the thing is like, you have to know how to approach clients, or you have to know how to talk with clients. So, and in addition to the skills you have, you need to have like you guys said, stable internet connections. We know that there's struggle with connection in Ethiopia, but like they don't care, right? Wherever your
I
client is, they're always looking
I
for.
I want to make a comment. I'm sure there's with a population of 300 million in Ethiopia and more than a billion in Africa, I'm sure there's some Einsteins of developers. I'm sure there's Isaac Newtons of developers. But they're useless if they don't have an internet connection. Right?
It depends. Like, so I'll say it
No,
depends.
I
And
mean,
let me tell you why. Let me tell you why,
for
Anthony.
remote work, okay, go ahead.
Let me tell you why. For example, there's a billions of transactions that happens on Upwork and Fiverr, for example, but they don't require you to have a really good your internet connection doesn't need to be the best because you don't meet face to face or have video calls as much with. And some of the stuff that you do, they give you the requirement. So a lot of it is text based. So to me, it depends on what kind of job you're doing, right? So for some, it's not as important, but usually the better your internet connection is, the more opportunities you have, and also the better you're able to present yourself. Because if, let's say, your video drops, or you say, oh, I couldn't do this job because there was no power or something, people will not understand your problems on this side. They're going to be like, that's your problem, and you didn't deliver what I needed for the money that I'm paying you for, so I'm going to go find somebody else who will. So
Yeah, you could have somewhat of a terrible internet connection, but you can't, for the intro call at least, when you're trying to introduce yourself, uh, make an impression. You can't make an impression if you're not there, right? So you don't have to buy. You can go to a coffee shop. You know, um, there's a ton of Ethiopian coffee shops that have some internet. At least for the intro call, it might be better than whatever you have at home.
I empathize because um, there's a lack of consistency in Ethiopia, right? Like, for example, I know if I go to Starbucks down the road, guaranteed there's going to be internet. But you can't say the same claim in Ethiopia, because sometimes you just show up to the coffee shop and they're like, oh, we don't have internet today because the sky is blue or whatever. They give you some random reason, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't say you must have internet. Here, people will lose their minds. People will be like, what do you mean there's no internet? Like, this is a Starbucks. Like, I have a job to do. What, they would feel like they're entitled to the internet. Ethiopia is very different. I guess one thing we can kind of hop to the next kind of bit and uh, talk a little bit about AI and being maybe an AI native developer, because that's coming up huge on the global market, and kind of aligning yourself is going to be so important. So maybe do you want to take this on, or should Daniel start pitching
Yeah,
in?
I'll start with it and I'll hand it off to Daniel. Um, I'm going to say that if if you're a good developer, or claim to be, and you get on a call with me, and you can't name more than 2 AI companies, you're just you're gone. Next, I mean, you're a developer. I was pretty surprised this one time. I asked this developer. He tested well technically, but I was like, name as many AI companies, when I sensed he doesn't have that experience. And he said OpenAI, uh, and there was nothing coming. Nowadays, if you're a developer, AI has to be part of your workflow. It's really sad that the Ethiopian education system, or African education system, it looks down upon AI because it's almost like cheating. But in the real world, hey brother, you have to get from point A to point B, and if forking repos, if using AI gets you to point B, then amen, right? And AI is literally turning 1x, 2x developers into 10x developers. So it's really a must, and it's necessary next to having a resume and a portfolio.
One thing I would say is still similar challenges with access, even just to get a subscription, right? Like, just get a paid subscription. One, the cost is not insignificant to a lot of people out of Ethiopia. Let's say if it's $25 or $50 a month. Like $50 a month might be what somebody makes as a salary in Ethiopia. So it's not as insignificant amount of money. And then the other side is, because of the banking system and different things, there's no credit cards or debit cards that you can use to kind of like get subscriptions across the board. This happens in a lot of different places where tools are lacking because of the cost, and the second is because of just the access of being able to pay for it. So I kind of feel for the Ethiopian side of and of course, to some extent also, I feel like when people say AI these days, it's like, oh, we know how to have API calls for OpenAI, like, or you know what I mean? It's not, they're not really building AI. They just know how to put wrappers around the existing model so they can do something. And that's not as complicated as building AI yourself. So to me, updating yourself to at least know how to use AI to build simple apps is what is required. It's not like, get a supercomputer, train these AI models. That's not what is required. It's more of, can you work with AI? Can you work with the existing models? And so I think we should let the dev in the room have something to say for sure on this.
Yeah, like I use AI tools mainly like to write code, fix problems, and also learn new things. But I've noticed that to use AI well, you need to first have like a clear plan of for what you want to build, and that's why experienced developers can get more done with AI than beginners, even when using the same tools, right? So when usually my workflow is like when I start a project, I first write down what needs to be built without using AI. So this helps avoid confusion since AI might not understand exactly what we want at first. So once I have a clear plan, then I start using AI to help me build it. So it's actually the set of rules for me just to start working with projects using AI. So yeah, so AI can get you like can get a 1x developer, a 10x. Like it's like the distance between Addis and Washington or is constant, right? Always constant. So what AI do is like it gets you there faster, right? So in order to get more out of AI tools, you need to have like a clear plan of. Otherwise, you will end up building a different project of what you started. So so you have to know how to use AI, how to prompt, how to give context. So in development, these things are very, very like required. So
Yeah, I think what you're saying is prompting, knowing how to prompt an AI is really important, or else you're gonna end up in Paris, right? This
yeah,
you're
AI
steering a
by
ship
itself
and
cannot like bring you a free project, or it cannot deliver the required. Like the current stage of AI is like it cannot actually understand the human requirement is, right? So developers are that's why developers are needed in order to communicate and gather the requirements from the clients or the users. So you need to put the requirements in a clear way. We say that as a context so that the AI can understand it better and give you the best out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, those are some really good points. Just making sure that you have the general understanding of what you're trying to build and figure out where does AI fit into this workflows. A pretty good um, way to go about this. And actually, interestingly enough, I remember we did a software development project a while back, and um, one of the things, and I'm not a developer, so it's very new to me. The client said, "Why don't we use Firebase? Why don't we use Firebase for the backend?" And our devs, they went, "Oh yeah, that would simplify. Like that would take 60 hours off the development hours." And I thought, why didn't we just suggest this at first? And the thing they said was, we always build our backends because you can't get subscriptions on the Ethiopian side. Like we don't use subscriptions. So there are some things like just completely new to an Ethiopian dev. For simplest, like Stripe integration. Stripe integration on the Ethiopian side makes no sense because there's no use for it. But that's the basics of building an app on the side. You need to know your Stripe integrations. So there's like a few things where, to what Daniel was speaking about, where you have to kind of understand what is the level required globally, what kind of skill sets do I need, and make sure you're up to standard. Otherwise, when you get asked, if you say, do you know how to integrate Stripe, and you say no, that interview is over. Like, you cannot get that job. So definitely some things to think about. And yeah, as we're kind of getting close, I think I would love to kind of um, touch on some experiences, like real stories that maybe we've had in terms of like, uh, as we've been involved in this space. And I can get going some of the reads, and there are positive ones as well, but just to kind of push light on some of the things that can happen here and there. I've had people who missed interviews. I've had a dev who didn't get started on the project, and we're at half point. He had already been paid 50%. He hadn't even started. And then when we were like, oh, let's deploy for QA, he started working then. So these kind of things are just like completely um yeah, this is not acceptable on the side. People just can't even imagine you doing um it's just weird for a lot of people. um
You know,
and
we're remote, so I believe most of our problems is with communication. I think you would agree. And um, for example, just last week, we found we had a client who's looking for mostly a full stack backend developer. We figured out like a year ago that we can't post any full stack developer jobs because everybody's a full stack developer, because everybody knows they get paid more, right? So we found a developer that fits the role, and we briefed him. We even assessed him, gave him a project, and he did great. The client loved it. Awesome. We signed the contract. One day in, the guy goes, "Oh, this is just not really my cup of tea," and he dips. This one was recent, and there's a couple problems there. Number one, as a developer, you have to communicate. There's going to be problems. Like, life's not rainbows. There is going to be problems. It's not if, but when there is problems. You have to communicate properly. Here's some things that developer could have done better. Hey, I'm more of a back-end developer, and I was asked to do some front-end work, and it's not really my cup of tea, but I'm willing to do it if you increase the salary, which is okay. That's called negotiating for yourself instead of, because really, if you're a developer, you're a developer, but you get paid $1 million, and you'll turn into a janitor, right? Right. So it is about money, right?
the as you said that, like, one thing I was just thinking about was Ethiopian culture, where people really feel uncomfortable, I guess, addressing things that could lead to conflict. And ghosting happens a lot. Let's say,
conflict avoidance.
Yeah,
Yep.
conflict avoidance. So let's say I found a job with you, same story, but then somebody offered me a better job. Instead of saying, hey, Anthony, I actually found a better job. Thank you for the opportunity. But I will not be continuing with our arrangement. People just ghost you because they don't want to have that conversation. It's people very one. You also get pushback from the other side, right? Like, if you're Ethiopian, you might say, what do you mean you got another job? Like, we agreed, we shook hands, and then you're gonna give it to them too. So for them, they don't want to deal with that, so they just
It's somewhat
avoid
of a
you
confrontation, yeah.
because but they don't know On the North American side, there's no confrontation. You do what is best for you. So when you say that, you say, oh, okay, I understand, totally fine, and then that's it. But because they have a very different social context, for them sometimes they miss out on the communication, and we think, what's wrong with you? Like, just tell the person, it's not that big of a deal. But for them, it's a very different social context. So some of these big challenges that happen, and this is something I've learned doing this for a bit, is because what is common, acceptable, typical in Ethiopian culture, and what is the same on the US or Canadian side is very different. And to give you an example, for example, we had somebody working in marketing, marketing manager. We found a role for them. And the thing that happened was in Ethiopia, it's very hierarchical, right? Like, you don't tell your boss they're wrong. That is super taboo. Like, you could lose your job for that, or that person will make your life really miserable because they would say they attacked me as a person, they challenged my ideas, and then on this side, it's very egalitarian. You actually, it's totally normal for you to have a different opinion. You're expected to share that, right? If you're talking in a group in a meeting and your boss says something, you might say, well, I think it would be probably be better and have a different idea. Your boss is not gonna take offense, right? He's gonna be like, yeah, you have a good idea. I can see your point, and that's a normal conversation. So in this particular instance, there was an idea suggested that was a very bad idea. She knew it was a bad idea. She didn't say anything because it was the boss who brought up the idea. The project got built. It was a disaster at the end. But it's not that she was a bad person, or it was just cultural, because you don't in Ethiopia. So a part of the challenges is like, okay, let's learn what the culture is in North America so that we don't make mistakes. So now that person, if she had said, oh, I don't think this is a good idea because of this reason, then she could have saved the whole project. But when
It's
you
like
stay silent, North America, people think you agree.
yeah.
Like, if you
Yeah,
don't say anything, people don't
it's like
agree.
a sin of omission. If you see a problem, point it out and be genuine about it. I uh, I, I I I highly look up to um, developers that work for me that say, hey, I don't think this is a good idea. They're voicing their opinions. Okay, awesome, nice. That's okay. We all make mistakes, and I've learned because of you. You make mistakes. That's okay. You learn. We learn together. We move forward. Let's communicate. And one book came to mind. I think the 48 Laws of Power by I believe it was Robert Greene. I think if you're a remote worker, I think you should, especially in Ethiopia, you should skim through that book. The book can be a bit alarming and type of postmodernist, like the world's all power. Not really. It's just to give you a better understanding of uh, the human psyche, and kind of like a precautionary lens. Know that the power exists in the world, and people are playing the game of power. So I think that's important to understand, at least in the West.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, let me give Daniel a chance. I feel like he's the one who has said the least. Do you have anything that you'd like that's coming to your mind that you'd like to share, or you've been thinking about in the background, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess like you guys have mentioned like most of them. So yeah, like you have to use like open source tools. You have to get yourself like sometimes like I have this interview like we are looking for a virtual assistant one time, and they were like when I reached out to them, they were like asking like if the meeting can be in Amharic language. So that was a bit funny because we are like international company, so we have different clients from different like places. So this was a bit funny. Like some people expect like to the same kind of work culture in remote teams also. I mean, like so uh, yeah,
I'll tell
that's
you a story about my virtual assistant. We put it on applications. We received, we had to pick through 400 resumes, and a lot of them are professional cappers. They would, we would put in some questions that didn't make sense, like, do you have professional experience building with Google Ads, integrating with Google Sheets, with Railway, Quantum? And they'll say yes. Like, what? We put some questions in there just to see if you're truthful or not. The one that's with us right now, she was just honest full way through. And if you're a developer, whatever your skills are, you can exaggerate a bit, you can sell yourself a bit, but there is a fine line between selling yourself and just lying, right? So this is remote work. You have to try to come off as personable as possible, as honest as possible, as authentic as possible, and people will accept you as is.
Yeah, I think Daniel had a few more things. Let me circle back to you so that you can finish up, Daniel, and then we can end for today. I'll connect in the future as well for sure. Have another session.
Yeah, so I think like this is the right time for like African talents to show up in the international market, because currently like you can actually have a team that like without any cost working remotely. So for development, for example, you can have a Vercel where you can develop your portfolio projects, open source, host them on GitHub for free, deploy them on Vercel for free. So your clients can really know what you can do. You can use LinkedIn like for free. You can use AI tools like ChatGPT or Poi.com or like Cody, which is a VS Code extensions. So mostly I use Cody. So from Ethiopia, it's a bit hard to find paid subscriptions in like AI tools like Cursor or Cody, but you cannot pay unless you have unless you land a job. So, but as a starter, as a beginner, you can utilize these free tools, which is Cody. I prefer to recommend Cody for beginners, which is a very friendly development tool that can like guide you through the whole development cycle. Vercel for development, Supabase open source Firebase alternative if you cannot have subscription. And there are many open source tools you can use to just show yourself. So I think that's very very important for developers.
Perfect. Those are some really good tips. So thank you, Daniel and Anthony. It's really nice that we were all able to connect today and have the chat. And Anthony was actually the person who suggested this. So if you're watching this video, you know who you have to thank for this. And yeah. And if you have any questions, reach out to us on all our social medias. I'm active on LinkedIn. Anthony is active on LinkedIn. Daniel, I'm assuming, is active on LinkedIn as well, or through the different business channels, through websites and different things. You can reach out to us. And thank you for listening until we see you again next time.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.